Hello, welcome to Content Club Pep Talk. And today we have Lisa Matthews doing a wee talk about her career. I've known Lisa online for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, but I think around a year ago I was walking around an office in Macclesfield and I walked past a woman and I went, I think I know that person. And Lisa looked very like walking around with her headphones on. And are you Lisa Matthews? Was. So yeah, that's enough of that nonsense. And also, I wanted to say that it's great that Lisa has the second best accent on this call.
We can have a debate about that.
Anyway, I want to hand over to you, Lisa.
Okay. And please let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see the screen, the whole slide deck. Oh, that's just the slide now. Yeah, that's great.
Great. Okay. The other thing is when I put my name, my mum always says you have to put PhD on or I get wrong. So mum, I've done it, right? So when she watches the record, she can see. Okay. So thanks everyone for coming along after a day of work. I know we're all busy, so thank you for giving up some time to come and support the pep talk. Tom has been trying to pin me down to do a pep talk for about a year, so thanks for not getting sick of me, Tom, and throwing me out of a window. I wouldn't have blamed you. He's been leaving me lovely little voice notes so we can sort the date out. So it's finally here. And because it's a pep talk, I think I do talk a fair bit about content design and information architecture and content strategy. But I have been a content designer a long time, and probably a lot of us have been on the call. And I wanted to kind of reflect on what I've learned. And so, but the talk's not really, it hasn't really got takeaways or things like that. It's more like sort of one designer talking out loud to other designers and like-minded people who do similar types of work. And I think I'm doing that because I think sometimes it's just good to talk out loud and share things that we already know. So I think while a lot of the stuff I'm going to say it won't be news, I think maybe it's just packaged up in my sort of through my 30-year lens, and I sort of worked a long time and come through, being really excited about everything to be really embittered and cynical to out the other side. And actually, I really love what I do and just, take every day as it comes. So what I'd like to, I think it takes about 30 minutes. And then there's a bit at the beginning where I want you to use the chat and just sort of share something in response to a question I'll ask. And then wait till the end and then we can have a chat and any questions or anything. And you may well disagree with some of the things I say. It's absolutely fine. It's a broad church and there's room for all of our opinions. So, okay, I've just set my timer off as well. So, okay, the first thing is all our content careers, I think, are on a squiggly line. And I just wanted to show mine just so you can see sort of where I've come from. Right now, I started a new role in Department of Work and Pensions, so I'm a permanent civil servant now. And so, but how I got there is a very squiggly line. It's I didn't, wake up when I was 16 and come out of school and say I want to be a content designer. Like a lot of us, it took a long time for me to sort of realize I was on this squiggly line. So this is the I think this is the side with the most content on it because it's the only way I can remember, because unfortunately I've been around, fortunately I've been around a long time. So we're starting the top left hand corner. In 1983 I left school and started work in local government, and I worked in the library service in the northeast of England. And while I was there I moved on through to 1990 where I started to work in an art department, as it was called then, an art studio. And like it says, that shows there was scissors and glue, and we made things, tactile objects, and we made tactile content. And then while I was in that studio, other Apple Macs arrived. They just sort of descended one day and I had no idea what was going on. And then in 1995, that's the place where I made my first website. So I was working in intellectual property in a library. And myself and a colleague of mine who was really interested in computers, and he had like a Commodore or a ZX or whatever they passed me by those. He was really interested. He said, we should make a website. And we did it. And we were the first one in this Patents Information Network to make a website. And I didn't realise at the time how sort of forward-looking it was that our boss let us do it and not instead cut us off. And then in 1998, I moved into publishing and marketing. So I used to work in for Dyslexia magazine. If anybody's heard of that, it's a magazine that's still going. It's for women writers and all types of writers. And I worked in marketing and advertising, and then moved into being an editor there. And then I went into higher education because I left school when I was 16 because I hated school. So I did a degree and a master's in that till up to 2006. Then I had a bit of a break, did some work, and then I did a PhD just to see if I could, because I think a lot of people thought I couldn't. Well, I thought they thought that anyway. They probably didn't. Then that RLF is, I got quite a prestigious writing residency with the Royal Literary Fund, and I worked in a lot of medical schools doing medical humanities work, but as a writer and a poet. That was really interesting, and the stakeholder management and that was a real challenge. But anyway, it was a really interesting job, that. And I started to do quite a lot of academic research. And then that purple dot in 2012 is when I started my own content consultancy, and that was called Poetics, because I'm a poet and I'm also really interested in technology. So I just smashed the words together and made up Poetics. And then in 2020, I sort of decided that I wanted to work on bigger content problems and bigger content estates. And I loved being self-employed, but I'd had enough, to be honest. And then COVID happened, and that sort of made the decision for me really quickly, because I had clients and some work in, and I just lost it all in about 4 weeks. It was a really scary time, and I'm sure it was for a lot of us. And I was really lucky to get a job at Nexa Digital, whose work I'd admired, that accessibility work, for a long time. And so I got a job there, and sort of went up to a senior designer. And then I left it was April time this year, had a bit of a sabbatical, and I'd been thinking quite a long time about being a permanent civil servant. And the reason I joined Nexa was because I knew that they did a lot of contract work with the civil service. So I got a chance to try it out over 5 years, and I really enjoyed it. And I sort of made the decision to have a bit of a break and then jump to being a permanent civil servant. So that's sort of how I got to where I am today. I started in 1983, and I was still going strong. And I was just saying to Tom and Nia before, I still some days have no idea what I'm doing. So it's like, I think that's just part of it. It's okay. So back in 1995, here's what I saw when I put on the computer. It was Windows 95. It was on a CD-ROM. You could actually take the CD-ROM out of the box on the shelf beside where me and my colleague Steve sat, and we used to put it in, and we used it to design the Patents Information Network website that I told you about. And I think I had been writing content and being an editor and doing writing research and things, but it was the first time I'd made something digital that actually users interacted with. And it became sort of a flagship for the other libraries in the group to see how we could use digital, more joined up services. So I'm really proud of that, and I'm really pleased that I worked with my colleague Stevie, who now I think he works in academia now. He's a composer in his spare time, but he was great with the coding and the file transfer side of it. So I used to code and work in the C line then, but it's not something I do now. But back then, sort of cut my teeth on making a website with one other person, and we didn't know what we were doing, other than we knew it had to work, and you plugged it in, it had to work. So, and I think what I'd quite like to do, just for a minute or so, is I'd love you to put something in the chat about the first thing you worked on, whether it be, I don't know, it might be that you only started last year as a content designer. I don't know. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have been around as long as me, but it would be really nice as we're continuing just for you to drop some things in there, like one of the early things you worked on. What do you remember the first thing you worked on? I do, but that might just be because, it wasn't stressful actually. It was because I'm proud of it. I remember it. And it was the first time I'd made a website. It felt like magic to me. So it would be, I can't see the chat at the moment because I'm in sharing mode, but if you could just do that, and then I'll have a look at them at the end, and it'd be nice to see some of the things that you've worked on, and I mean sort of specifically early on in your time and your career as a content designer. It'd be great to see. So mine was on Windows 95. I made a Patent Information Network website with my colleague Stevie. So there's just a little bit of, just give you a couple of seconds to do that. I'm going to have a drink. So you can just keep tapping away. As I say, I can't see, but it would be lovely to see some of the things you've worked on earlier in your career. Okay, so from drawing boards to design systems. So anybody who doesn't know what a drawing board either isn't quite sure or hasn't worked on one before. So back in the 90s when I was working in an art department, that's not me because I haven't got a beard, I never have had. But we, in the studio I worked in the local government, we all had a drawing board like this, and it was sort of an upright thing that tilted, and you can see there's lots of paper on it and there's grids on it and rulers, and basically that's what we did. We worked in hard copy and built, so we produced word-based content, and then we, but if there was any design involved, we used a drawing board, and that's what it looked like. And that's how I started my career, sort of standing up at a drawing board like that. So I was doing that for a couple of years. And it's funny when you think about the people in your career who've been really instrumental, and you don't realise at the time that it's happening, how important things are. And so I was like, I was young and stupid when I worked at the studio. I was just out all the time, and just used to come in after having never slept and things. But I absolutely loved working in the design studio, and we had a fantastic graphic designer called David Boyes, and he must have had the vision to think we need to go over to digital desktop publishing, because the local government produced books taken from all of the local history collections we had. So we did publish all sorts of things, from teeny bookmarks and leaflets to like posters that went on the side of buildings, to you name it, we made it. And obviously David must have thought we should get ahead of the game and get a digital design studio. So literally one day I went in and all the drawing boards I went to one side, and then there was just these Apple Macs there. And it was really an exciting time, and I'd never used a computer before. And so a bit like people say, well, what's your job title? Are you a writer? Are you a designer? These are some of the things we used to say we were back then when we used these drawing boards. So we could say we were tactile. We did tactile design or composite design. Sometimes it was just artwork or studio work. One that people used to use a lot was analog design, or we were doing drafts or drafting. And that's basically what we called design then. And we did write copy, and there was editorial process, but we also produced books and pamphlets and the sort of the analog tactile objects that you could pick up. And so we went from doing that in paper to this machine, and that's the one I learned on. I remember there was a program called Klondike, which was it was the solitaire game, playing cards, and I just didn't understand how we had to sit and play. Work to me, but of course we were learning the mouse skills. I'd never used a mouse before, and it was like moving a big box of matches around with a wheel on the bottom. It wasn't very easy. So we all had time to learn how to use the mouse, and so we went from having this whole department full of typewriters and plotters and spray mount stations, and we had a letter set room where all the fonts were. It was called the font room. We went from all of that to phasing that out to we had an Apple Mac computer each, and it completely changed everything. And it's sort of, when you look at that drawing board, you can see there's a real estate to that drawing board, which is, to me, just made complete sense on that Mac. That Mac screen was a drawing board to me, and that's why I felt even though I'm not really a techie computer type of person, I felt like I could sort of be quite hands-on and get used to using the computer, and it made sense to me because I'd used this drawing board. And I think it was I realise now what an invaluable training it was for me as a content designer, especially now working in more like public service and product design. So I feel really lucky that I sort of worked at that in the local government and the library service, and had this graphic designer called David Boyes who made the business case for all of these Macs. It must have cost a fortune. So we went from paper to screen, and then so from then I've been a content designer or worked in publishing and worked around words and stuff ever since. And I think when I was trying to think about the sections of the talk, I wanted to think about some content design 101s, and these are just things I think that are just always sort of in my peripheral vision all the time when I'm doing my work, and I feel like they might sort of run through me like a watermark now as a designer. So I'm just going to sort of share these with you, and as I say that, again, it is really, this is me talking out loud. So the first one is the words we design, they're not ours. They're for the user and they belong to the service provider or the organization. They're not ours. And I think that's, I didn't get that straight away as a content designer. And so it was an interesting learning curve getting through that realization. And the second one is that I think content design is as much about working with people as it is working with words. In fact, I've been trying for a while to think about, is there a ratio of like, if you tend to the relationships around the work you do, if you did that for say 70% of the time, would 30% of the content be really good? Would it be a good process? Would it be good for the users? Would the outputs be good? And I don't know what the ratio is, but probably like a lot of us, sometimes I don't do a lot of writing. I do a lot of facilitation or creating the space or doing the stakeholder management. So I didn't see this at the time when I first started as well, that actually it's a people based discipline. And I've, so I feel that really strongly now. Actually, it's really important. This is one that just still, I just look at this to remind me sometimes that these things do happen, that, I just always think, oh, we're all goats on a cliff. And there I've got like the UCD just hanging on for dear life on the cliff. The little goats there, one peeking around the corner. They look quite happy actually. But then the background there, look down, there's the planning meetings going on. And I often feel like there's that huge chasm between the decision making and the people who are going to be executing what happens when those decisions are made. And I put UCD team there, but to be fair, I think a lot of our colleagues in digital design and development might feel like a goats on that cliff. I know devs who feel like that as well, or business colleagues. But because this is a content pep talk, I wanted to put UCD team. So basically, we're just all goats on a cliff waiting to be told what's going on. And this is, I think this is my tweet of the decade from Colin, who used to work at Content Design Scotland. And I think this is a beautiful exemplar of content in action. And he just sort of put this up one day in, when was it? 2021. And it was really popular and really resonated with lots of the content community. And so Colin said, content design is saying, you should have invited me to an earlier meeting until you die. And it's made me laugh today because I've had quite a good day. But on other days, I just think, oh no, Colin, you're so right. Anyway, I think that's a 101, that we know we're not usually first at the party. And, that's an ongoing thing we have to deal with. Everyone has an opinion. I mean, it's just, it's interesting when I ask devs how it is for them. Like most people don't have an opinion about a dev's code unless they're other coders. Whereas because language is ubiquitous, everybody has an opinion on what we do. And I think there's challenges in that, but there's also massive opportunities in it. And that's where the people side, I think, of content comes in. And for me, listening is just as important as the words we design. In fact, I think it could be more so now. Again, that ratio thing, I try and listen a lot more than I make content these days, unless I'm, really deep into writing something long or complex and, I've got to write words. So those are some things that are just in my mind all the time, and they haven't really changed in the last sort of probably 10 years. And I'm not sure they will do anytime soon. So there's some core values I've got as well in my content design practice. And I think I wanted to share these. And again, I think some of you, or I know other people who I've spoken to about this, don't agree with all of this, which is, again, it's absolutely fine. But for me, there's something about having definitions and core values that help anchor me so I can do the work I need to do wherever I am, because there's always dependencies and, boundaries on things. And, we don't work in green fields. And I think it's a reality for us as designers. So I think that I probably say it at least once a week, context is everything, whenever I'm talking to people about whatever we're doing. So I think the context of the words we design is absolutely everything in the work we do. We're not writers. We work with words, yes, But for me, we're first and foremost UX designers. So when someone says to me, what do you do? I would describe myself, my day job is being a UX designer, and I specialize in the design of words and designing with words. And sometimes that people will disagree with me about that, we always have an interesting conversation about it. But for me, I'm not a writer. I am a writer, but in my spare time, when I'm at work, I'm a UX designer because I'm creating and designing words with other people to help users do things, find things. Another core value is less is absolutely always more, no matter what anybody says, unless it's a user need for a long guidance or a long read. We always are looking to reduce and simplify. It's just as simple as. And I think one that I've only just started to really appreciate in the last few years is that because content's always iterating and changing, and it's never really finished. It shouldn't be, because as users change, the content should change as well, and the needs change. And I've started to realize over the last few years that our process is just as important as the thing that the output, the words that we produce. And that's because I think there's so many different ways you could approach something. I always want to be able to remember why it is I made some decisions that I made, so that not just so that I can defend them, so that I can explain them to other people. Again, that the pushback we sometimes get for me now feels sometimes like it's got the potential for more collaboration and understanding, because if I can clearly explain why I chose a particular set of words or method rather than another one, I think that does really help to build collaboration and trust in teams. So I think that why we choose to do things is always based on best practice and research. And when you cite things in that, it really helps people, I think, to get a handle on what it is we do. And I've swapped the colour of this one, because I think this one's really, really important. And I say a version of this every time I work with somebody's content for the first time. People really care about the content they create. So, as I just said before, we don't work in a greenfields environment. And so we're usually crafting other people's content. I mean, there are places I work where I've been the content originator, but less and less so as my career goes on. And I think there's something around that people care about the words they write in a way that they don't other things. And so for me, I have to be very overt about paying respect to the words that other people create. And I actually use the word sacrosanct. And then if people don't know what that means, I explain it. And I'll say it's an act of respect that I treat your words with care and attention in the respect I would my own. And so at the beginning of a project, the first time I sort of get hands on content or someone shares that with me, I will say a version of this. And I think it makes a difference. And I'm just remembered as an aside of a colleague of mine, Will, who used to work at Next and now works in GDS. I remember him saying once that people they learn how to write to pass exams and look clever. And I think I thought that was a really interesting thing that I'd never really thought of. That actually that there's a hangover into our adulthood about that actually at school we have to write things to look clever, to do things, to get good marks. And I think that there's something in there quite actually profound in people, that they feel vulnerable when they share their content. And I'm not sure if there's any other digital discipline that has it to that profound level. I think it has it. There's other versions of it, but people care about their words. So now I want to go on to words and reading them. And why I don't class myself as a writer is because people experience digital content differently, as we know. And so I don't think they really read digital content. They do. There's an active reading involved, but people experience content, they skim through it, they forage, their eyes jump around. We're always looking for things. We're not sort of reading left to right or right to left, and following a narrative in that sense. So I think the digital experience of content is why I don't class myself as a writer, because of this. I think the reading bit's really important. And I'm not sure if any of you have seen these heat maps. There's some different sort of patterns of how people actually experience content on a page. So this is by tracking people's eyes over some testing that's been done. I have got the citations for these, but not on the slides, unfortunately, but I can provide them. So this one's called the F-shaped pattern, and you can see, so where the red are the shading, that's where the most, where users were focusing the most, where their eyes were lingering. And so that's an F-shaped pattern. You can see there's been a lot of the scanning the headings there. This one is a spotted pattern where you can see they're sort of around the CTAs. And, you know, there's some of the words there have been barely glanced over, which I think it's just always really interesting when you see this sort of research, and, you know, you can see something in real time as well, how people are interacting with our content. I mean, do we need anything but where their eyes are? I don't know the answer. I just think it's a good question to have in mind. And this is another one called the layered or the layer cake pattern. And again, obviously, it looks like it's a biog page, so it makes kind of sense that you would, but you can see that they're scanning towards the top left and at the top lines, and it tails off. So people aren't reading all of that content. And there's also why a digital experience of content is different to reading printed pages is to do with, and I think, I don't know who made this next graphic, but I think it really it's an exemplar of how we all interact with content. So I'm just going to put it up and I'll sort of let you look at it for about 15 seconds. I think that's whenever I'm trying to explain to anybody why we focus on headings, why they're important, why we front load them, why H1s, H2s are so important, I show them this graphic, and it does a pretty good job, better than I can actually. And I haven't found out who made that graphic. So if anyone on this call knows, please tell me. I've asked a few people and I haven't found out yet. So I always like to acknowledge somebody's work. It takes about 50 milliseconds for a person to form an opinion on whether they're going to stay on a web page or not. That's not very long. So, you know, people don't interact with a magazine or a novel or a printed article like that. Hence why I don't feel like I'm a writer. I design word content for digital experiences. And in Nielsen Norman, this interesting, I mean, this is quite old, this now, but I haven't heard any challenge to this yet, that on average, web pages are only, the content on them is only the 20 to 28% of the content on any page is ever read, which I think is borne out by those heat maps that I showed just before there. And it's like, so what's the rest? What's the rest of the content doing? And again, I don't know the answer. It's contextual. It all depends on the content and the use case. But that's quite telling that, you know, obviously when you want a long read, a person will scroll, they will read the whole thing because that's what they want. Whether they want to know how to pay a bill or apply for something, they don't want to read and scroll right to the bottom. So they'll, if they can, they'll just go away and do it somewhere else. So there's sort of that under a second to decide whether to stay on a page, and this only between, well, under 30% of content is ever read unless it's the use cases for a long read. I always sort of keep that in mind. I'm just going to have got one thing on words and finding them. So there's, as we know, no matter how good the words are, if a user can't find them, they may as well not be there. It's a bit like that thing of it, you know, a tree falls down in a forest and there's no one there. Did it fall down? It's like, you know, does our content exist if people can't find it? And the bit I don't work on any information architecture now, but I'm sure some of you on the call will do. And, you know, when we're working on websites and we're just, you know, we get that document dump from the client or from whoever's handing over to us, and there's just millions of documents in it. What the hell do you do with them? And one of the most useful books that I've read on this is Richard Saul Wurman's, I think it's called Information Anxiety. Anyway, he sort of coined or made popular the phrase information architecture. And he said the organization of information is finite and can only really be done in these under these five headings: location, alphabet, time, category, and hierarchy. And Wurman coined, as we know this, we were just talking about the millions of acronyms there, but Wurman coined this acronym, and it's an acronym that I always have. I've got it on my workstation. I don't look at it as much at the minute, as I say, because I'm not doing information architecture as much. But basically, Werman argued that any set of content and any set of information, you can basically sort them out with these 5 categories. And it's locations about organising information sort of geographically or spatially, whether that be a region or a postcode or a distance from one point to another. Alphabetically is, as it says on the tins, A to Z format. Time is organising information chronologically, like sort of like the timeline I showed of my career to date from 1983 to now. So that sort of temporal span, you can things in the past, things now, things in the present. That's a way to categorize things. And finally, hierarchy is structuring information, so from the most general to the most specific, or by rank or by organization. Like, I might want to organize a set of books in one way, but you might look at them a completely different way, a record collection, whatever it is. And Werman argued that Latch is really the definitive way to sort out your information. I have found it over the years to be incredibly useful. And I found out about Latch. I hadn't read the book. I did a workshop run by Chris Howe, who I think he's the UX head now at Clear Left. We did a brilliant workshop on Latch a few years ago, and it blew my mind. It really did. It helped me understand metadata, and just it really helped me make sense of the information we often get dumped on us as content designers. So I don't want to go into any more detail. Again, you can go and look this up. There's loads of stuff written about it, and like Abby Covert's books on how to make sense of any mess, I think, are inspired by it. It's a really useful acronym. I rarely remember acronyms, but Latch is in my mind. And sort of to wrap up, I think I want to say that, like, I often used to think, I wonder how everybody else does content. Are there systems I don't know about? And it's like, no, there isn't. I don't think there is. If there is, please tell me, because I'd love to know what they are. We're always kind of problem solving, depending on where we are. So I don't think we are missing things. And sort of this is how I feel a lot of the time, especially at the beginning of projects. After all these years, I still feel lost. And I think there's something really valuable in that now. It used to worry me when I was younger, but now I think actually being lost again, the potential in there is I have to look, I have to find out, I have to use Latch, I have to make sense of things myself. So given that we all work in a lot of low UCDR content environments, how do we make sense of things, and how do we work through? And I didn't actually finish this deck. I was telling Tom before, because so it's very much a work in progress, and you can see that, oh, hang on, one bit, right, the pages have gone from white to grey because these are pulled straight from my notes, so that I've got a working notebook. That's 30 minutes. We've got 5 minutes. I'm going to do a demo, so I'll just do that in a minute. I've got a notebook, and I would like to share these a bit more. They're things that I use to help me, especially at the start of a project. And the first one is, I think of there's 4 levels of content design. You don't just write once. I think you go through at least 4 levels of it. There's best writing practice for UX. Then there's the organization, our business-wide standards, all the style guides, the design manuals. And then there can be, the third level is when you're in a specific team inside an organization, there'll be something specific to that team or that product. And then the 4th level is there'll be something specific about the words, the lexicon, the diction of the people who are using the specific thing in that specific user journey. So don't just do content at one level. This best practice level, there's another 4 levels. That's something that I've created to help me work through a project when I'm lost at the beginning. Another thing I've created is an acronym called DUMPH, which is a really horrible sounding acronym, but it's stuck in my mind. And so I think this came out a bit of me when, my mum asking me, what do you do? And I was like, well, I've sort of had to think hard about how to describe the different types of content, because we don't just make one type of content. And what I mean by that is, so like DUMP stands for destination, UX, metadata, and forms. And what I mean by that is, so like a destination content would be, say, I don't know, a map or a long read or an article or some piece of information you want. That's where the user wants to go. That's the destination. That's something that is at the end of the use case. And then UX content is, if we're on a journey, the UX content's all the words in the road signs, the paint on the road. It's like it's the words in the interface that users usually, if it's good, they don't even see it, they just use it. The good design is invisible, we know, don't we? And the third type of content is the metadata, which I think is it's the future of content design without a doubt, as content becomes more important. And I always class forms as a different type of content, just because it's always where people get into a mess, either designing them. The forms are really hard to design. People assume they're easy, and we know what it's like as users filling forms in. They're a bloody nightmare. Now I've got a couple more slides, but I'll happily share the slides, but I want to talk about, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, and it's this is something I'm making right now at work. So I work in the civil service. So obviously, I haven't pulled AI out as something specific because I'm not really worried about it. I've been personally using AI for a fair few years now, and I should imagine some of you have as well. It's just sort of tipped over into the general consciousness now, but there are things happening in AI that worry me. But actually, I've been using AI as a neurodivergent designer and as a content designer for a fair few years. And I'm going to attempt, I very rarely do demos because I always go wrong, but I'm going to try to show you basically what I mean by a corpus is a collection of words. So when I start at that beginning of a project and there's that hot mess, I create what's called a corpus. So it's a term I've created myself. And it's basically an Excel workbook. And since AI's become more available and that you're able to create AI agents yourself, I've sort of created this method for pulling content out of all the content in the place I work in the civil service now. I've made an agent to sort of mix and cut up that content in different ways, and I'm going to try and show you. So tell me if you can see this. I've got to stop sharing, and then it's about another 3 minutes, and then I'll stop talking. Share screen, window. Here we go. Right. Let me know when you can see this.
Can you see it?
Can you see it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on. Yeah, you got it. It's gone away now.
Yeah, it's gone away now.
It's gone away now. What's it doing? I'm just going to see if it comes back. Hang on a minute. Here we go. I hate the icons, by the way, but so basically, I work in a child maintenance service section of the UK civil service, and basically, a colleague of mine described the child maintenance service as PayPal, but for people who hate each other. And actually, I think, not to make light of it, it's a really serious area, but also it's PayPal for people who have difficult relationship, but also hate PayPal as well. So it's a really interesting, very highly charged, stressful space for our users and for us as designers. And that is a shed load of content to take in. And I'm just overwhelmed the whole time. So what you're looking at is, this is a Google window. And Google have got this AI thing called Notebooks, which that's the icon for it. It looks like a little, I don't know, it's probably pages of a notebook. I've never thought about it before. And so what you're looking at, this left-hand column, these are bits of content that I've fed in to this AI tool that Google produces. It's free. You can download it. And I'm using this really responsibly, because obviously we have to think about GDPR, the ethics of large language models. But why I've used this for my work now is because I'm only using the content that's in the public domain. I'm not using anything that's got any sort of sensitivity labels on it. I would never share anything. Well, you can't cut and paste from the government systems anyway. But so basically, you can go to gov.uk and look up loads of information about the child maintenance service. And what I've done is there's a huge guide, which is about, I don't know, 40 pages long. I've put that in, lots of different guidance that our users can read. I've fed it into this AI, and now basically this thing here with that little horrible baby icon there, it's pulled out an introduction. But what I wanted to do is I wanted someone to ask a question about the child maintenance service. And I'm going to type it in and we'll see what it says. So does somebody want to ask something about the UK Child Maintenance Service? And I will type it in verbatim.
Anybody?
Something like, how do I apply for it?
Okay. So this is
boring, but
no,
be a common one.
Well, it's a very common one, because all of a sudden people will find them in a situation where they have to, where they maybe never thought they would have to. I see all my typing now as well. I think that's right. You just press. So what it's doing now is it's reviewing the content I've fed in. And it's going through those pages, so that huge long guidance document, which just gives me screen blindness. I can't read it for the accessibility side of it. But you know, when someone's trying to find out information, ask that very valid question at the beginning of what's probably going to be a difficult road for them, being, I need to understand the content so I can do my job. So I'm using this to help me navigate my way through. So you can see what it's done from your question is it's started to options for arranging child maintenance. So it's telling me there's two primary routes. There's family-based arrangements. That's where people are able to amicably do that. You know, the people are maybe split, but they're able to sort things out themselves. So that's a family-based arrangement, and we have products that can help them with that. But basically, people get on with it themselves. And then the other avenue is the child maintenance service, and that's where things break down and people need brokerage and help. And then you can see, actually, it's gone into a lot of detail. Now, so what I would say is, see what it does now. So basically, I'm using this tool to interrogate the content that I don't write it. I've got other colleagues in parts of DWP who write this, but I'm new in post. I've only been there about 3 months, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And so what it's done now is it's still a lot of detail, but it's sort of it's chunked it up a bit. So it's doing best practice content design on a lot. This is about a 40-page document. And it's like, so, and I just wanted to put, let's have a look. I'm putting in CMS because it knows what that means now. So now I'm asking it, who are the main users of the child maintenance service? It does a bit of searching around. And then here we go. And so these terms, sorry, I hate scrolling when people are looking at a screen. So it's very small as well. So I'm trying to make it a bit bigger. These terms, receiving parent and paying parent, are just used every day, all day in my work now. And for as we say, it's really stressful and hectic at the beginning. And this has really helped me pinpoint the language and the terminology of the area I'm in. And how this leads into the corpus workbook is, what I've done is I've got it to start to create an Excel format of all the different terminology. I think I'm up to about 45 terms now, and I've got them in an Excel sheet, which now is internally in the government system, so I can't share that. But it's sort of like, I just wanted to show you very hands-on that this AI stuff has been around a long time, and actually this is GDPR, this is public facing content, and it's really helping me to do my job. So that's one use of AI, which I think is really it's certainly helping me because of my overwhelm. And now this is has that changed to ChatGPT now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you can see down this left-hand side, these are all private GPTs that I use. So like, ones. That's all. The all lab is offline AI research lab. So I'm experimenting with Raspberry Pi computer, little Raspberry Pi computer, and Linux to work offline, because the thing I really hate about AI is the energy consumption. It's just how the government can't have a net zero pledge and bring in loads of AI. It's a massive contradiction. That's for another talk anyway. But so this is one I use all the time for my work as a content designer. I've been using this for about 4 or 5 years now. So it's only me who uses it. And it does pull information, but only again from the public domain. So I'm just going to say, how does you see, it'll probably just know I mean online. Now I have fed in lots of public domain information from different sources, but it won't say, like I said to it, give me the CDL book on content transformation. It won't do that. It won't let you anyway, but I've also got it all configured so it doesn't break any copyright. And you can see, look at the list. I can ask it anything, and I use it all the time. It's more tricky at work because of the security settings at work, but I've managed to be able to create the Google one because I can use Google. I just have to. There's a different workflow for getting some of the public domain content in, and that's what I wanted to show you in terms of using AI. So everybody can do it. It's really. I'm not saying it's easy. It's about knowing why you want to do it. I think that's the really important thing. And then I just want to wrap up. Hang on a minute. Where am I now? Window. Here we go. I think this is the last. Tell me when you can see this. And we're back on the slide deck now. Yeah.
I think it's coming.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so I just wanted to end with where I think we're all fabulous as content designers, and that's I think pictures of cats in wigs just make everything better. So I think there's something about us, for all the difficulty of our work and all of that, I think there's something about us trusting ourselves, and we know what we're doing even when it feels like we don't. And after 30 years I sometimes still don't feel like I know what I'm doing a lot of the time. But all of that stuff I've shared, that's all in the mix. And given that, I think we're all doing a really, really good job. And I think if we stick close to best practice and all the standards that we have available to us, we look to our UR and all our colleagues. And I think whenever I get lost, I just always go back to craft and the source materials, and it always helps to ground me. And I wanted to finish by just saying there's a million projects, there's a million things we're all doing, but there's only one of each of us, and that we trust ourselves, value ourselves, and I think we're all pretty fabulous. And thanks for listening.
That's been great, Lisa. Thank you. Just what I needed right now, actually. It's really good. Thank you.
Me too. I just wanted to say, someone had to run. I'm just having a look at the chat. Our website migration for Shelter Scotland. I'm just having a look at some of the first websites that people said. Discworld Society. Oh, right, 2002. Wow. Huh. Co-op board presentation. Oh, to the CTO as well, yeah.
That notebook, yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I don't know if I'm being a bit thick, but that looks like, I love how you can use it and gives you an idea. Do you put a prompt in to extract the words? Is there a prompt?
You can do, but you have to input stuff first, because otherwise So I put in the guidance. There's about a 45-page guidance document for child maintenance service. I inputted that first, which I could because it's a public domain content, and then from there I then write prompts like what's child maintenance. So you the more you put in the combination of information you put in, you kind of have to curate that. If you just whack any old thing in, you may as well just read it online. It's actually, what it's doing is it's looking for patterns and repetitions much quicker than I could as a human being. So you do use prompts, but you also have to get the most out of it, you put source material in. It's really powerful. A BA colleague of mine showed me it a few years ago. I think it's been around for about 3 years. And I think it sort of hit the news because it makes these voice recordings where, like, it's like a podcast. It'll make a podcast out of your information. It's these American voices. It's really weird, but does all sorts of stuff. So I can see there's a hand up there.
It's me. Hello.
Hiya.
That AI notebook does look really good. But I wanted to ask you, how do you know that it always gets it right? Like,
I don't. That's a really good question, and I don't. It's so what I've done with the new work I'm doing now in my new position, as I've been there about 3 months, I don't know the space at all. I'm only starting to. So what I do is I've shared with my colleagues that I'm using this tool, and only I'm using it at the minute. But what I do is I create outputs. So like if I have to talk about a piece of content I'm going to be working on, and I use the notebook, I take what I've done and I share it with the team, and we sense check it together. And it does make mistakes sometimes, because I think sometimes as well with that type of AI, if the source content's good, the answer will be maybe a bit more robust. So because it's from a trusted source, then that's another thing that I've weighed it up and thought, is it worth it? Because with some things, if you got to fact check the whole thing, and that'll take, you may as well just do it another way. Yeah. But with this, it seems to be helping me, especially at the beginning, because I just can't get my head around the amount of information. I find it really difficult to read it all. And so I'm getting colleagues who know the space really well, who've been there like 10 years, and they can see a lot of stuff quickly. There hasn't been that much, but I think I would never use it to, say, produce a draft of something and then use that to publish. I would never do it for that, ever. It's much more for me, certainly as a neurodivergent user, it's helping me to do a lot of reading and curate information, but I don't trust it. And I think it's a really good question. And that's one of the things that worries me about it. I've already read of things that I forget there's some big agency created a massive report, and it was just full of inaccuracies because, of course, it just hit publish in an AI, So I think it's a great question, and we always have to be aware of it.
No, that's a really useful answer. Thank you. It's all about like setting your parameters and your and your constraints for using it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So you have to curate information. I think in it, like so where content are UCD experts, I think if you stick in your expertise in your area of knowledge, your sense of where things might be going awry or they're completely wrong will be better honed. But I take it as read that it will hallucinate, and just using an open GPT and asking questions, I just wouldn't really trust that at all for anything general. So I think for something very specific, it can be useful. But again, it has to be a good use case. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. That's a really helpful answer.
Okay.
I think it's really interesting that our last pep talk, Alistair Somerville was talking about AI, and he was saying AI is only as good as what you're willing to lend it, as in your own skill set. If you are coming to it without a skill set and you think it's going to publish good content, that's where it's going to fall down. So it has to be used as a tool and a tool only. And I think people are, and this is future work for future content designers, people are putting too much faith into it to produce good content without interrogating it, without taking it away from the AI and redrafting it and rewriting it. So it's only what you lend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a feeling that people can sniff it out in a way, you know, like we talk about actually Richard Saul Wurman talks about information scent in his book, that you can you can find your way to things quite intuitively if things are designed well. And I think it's sort of the same in the AI space, really. But I mean, there'd be no, you wouldn't be a designer if the AI was writing stuff. I just don't see the point of it. I was reading something a few weeks ago. I think is it CNET in the States sacked all their content designers, and I think they were back within a year because the readership just knew it was content made by AI. It didn't sit well with people because human beings want to read things by other human beings.
Exactly. I'm just aware that we've gone past the hour. So I don't know if we want to end there, Lisa, or you want to take more questions.
If anybody, I was just having a look at some of the other things that people were working on as well. It's great to see what people were doing. I'm happy if anybody wants to ask anything else or share anything. I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes, but also if they will be at work all day,
Yeah,
have a cup of tea.